Okay. Well, thank you all for being here at the Fox Chase Wellness Center. So, organization started by Igor, what's your last name? Galma. And he is a great spiritual teacher. Really, he's going to be starting to do workshops. He's had a lot of ET contact. Is it okay I say that? And he's opened this place to all of us, but you don't know who you're talking to, but I guess we're all here for a good reason. My name's Alan Steinfeld, and I host a show called New Realities, and we're streaming this out live around the world here from Philadelphia. Welcome, if you're watching. And this is a real treat to have Marie Rodweil all the ways from Australia and around the world to share this, I think, really cutting-edge knowledge about what we're evolving into as humans, as the new humans, who's coming into the planet as these new star children with this incredible knowledge. Actually, Igor has a few star children daughters that, do you want to say anything about them?
No? I mean,
that's okay.
Yeah.
But there really is a whole new phase coming in, and we're awakening to the new humanity. So that's what we'll be talking about tonight. Let's give Marie Rodweil a big hand. Thank you, Marie.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming. It's always a pleasure to share with a new group of people, and I would like to ask, before I begin, how many of you have heard or seen any of my presentations? Oh, well, that's good then, because for the rest of you, I'm going to be able to perhaps provide you with some new information on what I call the bigger picture. But to give you a bit of an insight into myself, I came from a very, I call, grounded profession. I was a nurse, registered nurse in England, and also a certified midwife for many years. And then I went into counselling about 35 years ago. And from that, I heard all sorts of accounts when I worked with grief and bereavement, people dying or facing their mortality. So that opened up a whole avenue of human experience. But it was really this phenomena that I found the most compelling, even though by then I was working in hypnosis and I was working with people, remembering past lives and taking them into that space as well. Since I started with the very first gentleman that walked in the door, who said, "Mary, I've heard you're open-minded." And what he said was, "For this, there are no support groups. For this, they just think you're crazy." And he proceeded to tell me about having, waking up with marks on his body, shaved areas. His family were having experiences, and also a lot of the relatives wouldn't come to the house because they thought it was demons. And that is not as unusual as you might think, because unless you understand what's going on, it can be very confronting. Because one of the statistics that I've discovered with the new organization that I belong to now, that's the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation, which is a scientific organization, that 25% of the experience is physical, 75% is actually non-physical. So when people say, well, how do you know someone's had experiences? Well, they're not going to bring a piece of the spacecraft with them. But what they are going to bring is the changes that that experience has made to them and their lives. And that's what I'm going to talk about. My baseline for my own work is 3,500 individuals, families and children. And so I'm going to try, if I can, to give you an overview of the kinds of things that have compelled me not only to believe this is real, but to believe it's actually quite profound for the human race because of what I've come to understand. And I'm asking you just to keep an open mind. If something really interests you, then you go and research it yourself. Don't believe everything that I'm telling you by any means. Just listen, and you may find some of it makes sense, hopefully, but also do your own investigation. This is my journey with my research, and I'm going to cover a lot of ground with you tonight because I want to give you a bit more of the big picture rather than just focusing on one or two areas, because this is multi-layered, multi-complex, and I want you to be able to get a sense of how complex this is. So we're starting off with why do I call it the new human? And as we go along, I'm going to explain why I believe we as a species are actually shifting into a new heightened awareness of a new kind of human beings, that we have the potential to do so much more. And many of the new generations of children are actually showing us that, and I'm going to describe to you what they're about. So let's start with Beyond UFOs. This is literally beyond the UFOs, and this book, Beyond UFOs, is a scientific organization that I belong to because we're looking at it from a point of consciousness rather than its bright lights in the sky, because we've discovered that there are many ways that you start to interact with non-human intelligences, and it's not just necessarily by seeing this strange light that's doing unusual things. It may happen after a near-death experience or an out-of-body experience. It may happen after a shamanic experience or some healing experience. So in many ways that your consciousness can be activated to start to then see and communicate with other realms. And as Nikola Tesla says, the day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than in all the previous centuries of existence. So these are 2 organizations, my own organization, which is ACERN, the Australian Close Encounter Resource Network, which I started in 1997, once I realized that this was a reality and I wanted to offer professional support. But also now, this new organization of Free is looking at this from consciousness. We have scientists in our organization, physicists, doctors, nurses. We have a whole range of neuroscientists, psychology, professors, etc., etc. So we're looking at it from 2 levels. I'm looking at it from the experience itself. That's just to show you that the CERN is coming in and what have you. I didn't realize that was going. But really just to show how my first book, Awakening, How Extraterrestrial Contact Can Transform Your Life, was what I discovered in 2000 when I wrote that book. But since then, I'm seeing the same thing come up with the Free organization. Dr. John Mack was someone I was very grateful to come across his research. He's no longer with us. But what he did was write 2 books on this phenomena. And he came in as a professor of psychiatry at Harvard University. And he examined those that had had experiences, did all the psychological testing. And he came to the conclusion after his first book, which was Abduction, Human Encounters with Aliens, and he came to the conclusion it was real. He then wrote another book called Passport to the Cosmos. And this is what he's saying: the experience of alien contact itself may be more transcendent than physical in nature, yet nonetheless real. And Dr. Edgar Mitchell, who many of you know was 6th man to walk on the moon, and what he actually found, not only was this the most transcendent experience when he saw Earth from space, it really was a kind of epiphany for him in terms of looking at consciousness. And this is what he's saying: human phenomena, including consciousness itself, has eluded rigorous scientific description, not because of insufficient evidence, but due to a lack of a theoretical construct which could fit within the prevailing paradigms of science. So we needed one, and this is where Free came in. Because Dr. Rudy Shield, one of the co-founders, is an astrophysicist, and he talks about the model that explains it. The quantum universe supports information transfer from mind to mind at the speed of thought far exceeding the speed of light. The quantum hologram formulation explains and allows for these modern miracles. The reality of extraterrestrial encounters is supported through the quantum hologram theory of physics linked to non-ordinary states of consciousness. And look at the things that he's stated here: near-death experiences, past lives, telepathy, remote viewing, precognition, crop circles, astrology, orbs and balls of light, déjà vu, UFO sightings and encounters, spirits and ghosts. So all of these can be explained through that. And Dr. Edgar Mitchell is saying this: isn't it time we called intuition the first sense, which has been denied to us through the present 3D paradigm? The experience of contact with non-human intelligences is the key that will open the door towards understanding what is the relationship between what is consciousness and contact with non-human intelligence. So we have to start at the beginning. And one of the things that was compelling for me, as someone who was finding more and more people finding me and telling me about their experiences, I wanted to know, why are they visiting us? What's it all about? Why do they pick certain individuals?
What does it mean? Is it real, or is there such a thing as a truth embargo, for example? And all of those things took me into anthropology, archaeology, physics, the whole range of different areas of knowledge. But one of the most compelling was the archaeological finds. And there are many different anomalies that we find. And some of them are like this one here. And if you can see, there's what looks like submarines and helicopters and planes. And this is a plinth in Karnak. This one's in Karnak, I think, or Luxor. I'm not sure if I've got those mixed up. That one might be in Karnak. But the bottom line is that what are they doing on a plinth in an ancient monument, for example? Here we've got so many artifacts showing what look like non-human intelligences. The skulls found all over the world, for example, of these that are not, by the way, binding, as they try to say that ancient tribes actually bound the skulls and what have you, although they did copy that. They found those kinds of skeletons with fetuses with the same type of skull as the parents. One of the fascinating things with an experience is they have downloads of information. They suddenly find themselves knowing things they've got no access or understanding of that often contradict everything they've ever been taught. And Tracy Taylor had one of those. One night I had this intense feeling before sleep. I wrote in a process where I had little control, something beyond my present understanding. It was contrary to everything I'd been taught, and it said, the human race had been created by extraterrestrials. It contained information about genetic manipulation of human and extraterrestrial DNA to create another species. And I go into this in a lot of depth in The New Human, but let me give you some examples. Akhenaten. This is an image of Akhenaten here. Here's another one. 2 microscopic samples left of Akhenaten, and right is a mummy of the same age. Akhenaten's bone is denser and fundamentally different to the right normal bone in another similar mummy. We've got another bit of evidence. There's Akhenaten again. Look at the shape of the skull. A small fragment of desiccated brain tissue found. Akhenaten's DNA suggests he had a higher cranial capacity because of the need to house a larger cortex. The gene called CXPAC-5, responsible for cortex growth, suggests an anomaly which is visible in the image below. Here's one example of many, and if some of you know that the pharaohs often said they were sons of gods, and I'm going to talk about what gods with a little g really means. And for many of you, perhaps already worked that out. But this is an interesting diagram from Tracy Taylor, who did this drawing here, and that drawing over there. She was told when she went to Egypt it would fit over the hieroglyphs because of her own connection to Egypt in a past life. So they get a lot of, if you like, confirmation of their experiences and their understanding of their previous lives, as well as their connection to the star beings. But because I'm from Australia, I wanted to show you a picture from a Aboriginal artist talking about their connection to the Seven Sisters constellation. And this is what she's saying about the beings that she's painted. The planets are half a day's journey. They're friendly and just watch the Aboriginal way of life. These beings have no guns, spears or weapons. The air on their planet is food. The green uniforms protect from Earth's diseases. These space people speak all languages. The elders say the space people showed them how to grow food, find water, and showed them amethyst stones for healing. And what was fascinating to me was one of the young ladies, Tracy Taylor, when in a dream, she was visited by a being, which is called the Wandjina. That's an Aboriginal drawing of a Wandjina. She also mentioned that it was holding an amethyst crystal. So I'm always looking for confirmation or other ways to validate the information that I get. Dr. Lena Olsen is a Swedish molecular biologist, and she's become a really good friend of mine. One of the interesting things is that she's had encounters all her life. She calls herself not only experiencer, but a letter person, and I'm going to explain why that's so important in a minute. One of the downloads that she had in terms of information was this. The information of the donors and their background is there, a hidden key, and like PC programmers, they hide their work. The key can be activated. The programmers know when the person is ready to be contacted. The activated ones spread a signal to wake others up. I feel they're speeding it up. So what I'm finding is exactly that. More and more people contacting me that realize and have done over the last few years that this is relevant to them and they've never realized it before. And I'm explaining how we get activated in a minute. Dr. Francis Crick, co-founder of the DNA molecule, many years ago, he mentioned that he believed exactly this, that we have been intelligently designed. And I'm going to give you this background because it explains why, one of the many reasons why they're visiting us now and why many of you might be involved with this. This is what he said. For life to form by chance is mathematically virtually impossible. The immensity of complex coded and precisely sequenced information is staggering. The DNA evidence speaks of intelligent information-bearing design. They program the molecules so that when we reached a certain level of intelligence, we would be able to access their information and they could therefore teach us about ourselves. And I think he means two things here. One, that we've now reached a level where we can look at DNA and we can see that it's been spliced. And several whistleblower geneticists have told me that it's evident, absolutely evident. But secondly, because of the information in the DNA itself, is another way we're accessing it now as we become activated. And we've also only recently discovered there's a second code in our DNA. A second secret DNA code has been discovered, a genetic code within DNA, written on top of the DNA code the scientists have already cracked. This is what Michael Forrester is saying. This has enormous implications for health and consciousness. And that is the theme here. Looking at who we are, we have 223 genes in our DNA that is a sideways insertion of genetic material, all to do with higher psychological functioning. And when I spoke to a geneticist who worked with Dr. Crick, who was in his late 70s when he spoke to me, he told me a very interesting fact. He said, no other species on this planet has those 223 genes. And they don't know how we got it. So how do we wake up? How do people realize that this is real and is happening? This is one of the activating codes from a 17-year-old from New Zealand, Antonio. And it's got certain triggers when you view it, like some of the other things I'm going to show you, and how I think people are being activated. So it can start with the sighting of a craft. You may think you've just seen a craft doing unusual things, but there may have actually more going on. You may have actually had some interaction without realizing it. And one of the first things that I do when someone contacts me is say, will you do my questionnaire? Because I will then have a better idea if something else happened. So sightings of a craft, someone who's had a near-death experience, nearly 50% of those that we did the surveys of over the globe, nearly 50% had had a near-death experience. Out-of-body experiences, it can happen. Traumatic life events can be a trigger for activation. Healing practices, spiritual practices like meditation, doing things like Tai Chi, shamanic experiences, activation through energy vortices on the planet like ley lines or sacred sites. Crop circles could activate someone. Exposed to light language, music, scripts and artwork from people who've had encounters. And I'm going to explain how that apparently works. Downloads of new information and knowledge, cosmic frequencies coming from the planets and from the sun. And there's also something called walk-ins. This is soul swap. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit as another way we are being, if you like, educated and, if you like, activated into this awareness. So Nikola Tesla is saying, and I'm saying this because I want you to understand this is really important. If you wish to understand the universe, think of energy, frequency, and vibration, which is in fact all that there is. Everything that we see is made of that. These two scientists and others in Russia found something fascinating about DNA. And they noticed that languages are not coincidental, that they're intrinsic to the DNA and how the DNA functions. In fact, you can alter the nature of DNA through human language. The vibrational nature of DNA demonstrates that living chromosomes function like a computer. They modulated specific frequency patterns onto laser ray and with it influenced the DNA frequency and the genetic information. And why I'm saying that is because there is something that does exactly that, and that is experienced by those with encounters. Dr. Marie Batchelor, I write about in The New Human. She was married to a surgeon. She was doing normal MD work in her practice until she had a profound grief experience. And her son, who was 4 years old, was killed. And this is what activated this search for greater understanding. On the way to see my son after his accident, I saw this bright light in front of my eyes. I discovered it was the exact time my son died. Later, that same light came when I was at a place where he'd been injured. After my son died, I received downloads. Something big was guiding me. I also experienced an incredible energy zapping my head in this Indian temple, which I felt was galactic. When someone says to me, I hear you've gone spiritual, I respond, actually, this is a reality. It's quantum reality, it's science. We are talking science. And she now works as shamanic MD, working with activating DNA. And I'm going to explain a little bit more what I mean by that. This is what she's saying. DNA is changed by frequency. I bring this through my hands and through the light language. I describe myself as a DNA galactic rewirer. That's what I'm doing. DNA upgrades and activation through a galactic connection. And she says to her clients, your mind will not understand it, but you will feel it. The new DNA she talks about, and this is a holographic DNA, looks golden, and this is inserted, and the rest of the DNA lights up. So what she's talking about is a quantum side to our DNA that we're only just realizing. I don't know how many of you have seen Lucy, but it's a very interesting film about a young lady who, by an accident, absorbs a huge amount of a new drug. And this drug literally activates her DNA and she becomes multidimensional. The same kind of feeling happened with the scientist who had a healing by Dr. Marie Batchelor. She said this, I can see the matrix and what happened to the codes, all the transmissions. I'm like Lucy in the movie. We are in the matrix. I can see craft overhead transmitting frequencies to people. I see codes like barcodes being put into their heads. I see everyone is programmed. I see programs coming in. This has changed my life. Seeing things differently and interdimensional, and the new DNA looks golden. So she had an experience of the same thing. So this is what Dr. Batchelor is talking about now in her understanding. People don't realize the matrix is galactic. The gods of old religions are really multidimensional galactic beings. So this is a new modern way of looking at the beings that over the many centuries people have worshipped as gods. But in fact, in many cases, I believe, they were just advanced extraterrestrials with technology. And that's the modern way of looking at it. But it would have been seen as miraculous a few hundred years ago. And she also says this, I feel intuitively we're changing from carbon-based to crystalline. DNA is changed by frequency. The new DNA looks golden. And she's saying something else. I believe the new children are already activated. I'm going to talk about the new generations that are actually giving us real hope for the future. And I'll explain why I say that in a minute. I'm going to let you see a little bit of this young lady explaining a little bit about herself. She was 16 when she did this video. She's Spanish, but her English is pretty good. And I wanted you to get a sense of her and how she explains herself as one of these new humans, if you like, or a hybrid, for another word. And I just want you to, I think this one's, oh no, hold on a minute. I don't think that one's got the, hold on. I'm not sure I've got the video for her. Oh yes, I have.
At 15 years old, I made my consciousness shift because I came here with a wake-up call encoded in my DNA to wake up at a determined point in my life, which is something that many star children can with. And so I started to experience memory recalls of extraterrestrial contact, extraterrestrial incarnations, my own star system connections, or expansions, also great expansion of my own psychic abilities. I became highly sensitive when it was with the external reality. I will be able to read more strongly the people's thoughts. I will be able to read their own energy, to read their own emotions, to read their DNA. and their own genetics, their own connection to their star systems. And well, it can be very frustrating sometimes for star children because we are very sensitive. So I will recommend that if you pick up a negative energy, a low frequency energy, because you're very sensitive, I will recommend you that you do not fight the emotion, that you do not fight that energy, because resistance is actually slowing down the process of getting out of that frequency. So ground into that energy and try to balance it, try to bring it into a higher frequency, try to transform it into love again. I also started to experience seeing the human aura, and that also comes with seeing spirits. So don't be scared, beings exist in other dimensions. And seeing auras can be a little bit distracting when it comes to classes, but it's good. It's a nice ability. I will also experience in precognitive dreams, like every day. Don't fear if sometimes you have a dream and that happens in the physical reality. We have that ability. And sometimes I will also read when something is going to happen 3 seconds after I see it in my brain. It's very normal to have this kind of abilities where you're vibrating on a higher consciousness. And we also have another nice abilities. We have the ability to manipulate space and time. So if you are late some day to school or to some place, you can stretch the space time, and you can actually get arrive on point. And be careful also with the ability of manipulating electromagnetic fields, such as the light ups, because one day I turned off a light up with my own brain and it didn't work anymore. So be careful. And we also have the ability to heal with our hands, because the DNA structure in our hands is more crystalline. So we can actually manipulate energy a lot with our hands, so we can use it to heal other humans. And regarding with the extra-dimensional experiences, alien contact, I experienced it, and some of you will experience it or have experienced it. And an abduction, for example, can happen either in the physical way or in a metaphysical way. Your soul goes over your body. In regards to my physical abduction, they erase my memory on purpose, and that is something that they will do very frequently. But you have to understand that do not try to force the memory to come back to you, because even if you don't recall the memory, you actually have that information that they contacted to you in the subconscious. So you can channel that information and let it come through. Talking about channeling, is very normal that we usually start to channel information about something, such as me, for example, channeling physics, it's very recommendable that you write down all the downloads of information that you may have, And regardless to the astral abductions or the astral contact, is more frequently happening, because it's easier way to contact, an extraterrestrial being. I actually recall it. I was in a ship, there was this extraterrestrial talking to me. So sometimes information you receive it telepathically more than verbally, and it's a good sign to receive it directly. So I would recommend to you that do not fear the contact experience, that you remain super calm and super just confidence, because they are not going to harm you. If you're vibrating love, they cannot harm you. And remember that your star family is always protecting you and your guides. So don't.
I wanted you to hear a young lady who contacted me. She's now 17 or 18, but she has a great understanding of her experience, as you hear. She's talking about her psychic abilities. She's talking about the download. She actually gets downloads of quantum physics and information like that, because a lot of the things that the young people are learning, and the older generations, have had education on board spacecraft or on other planets. So I'm taking this to a whole new level in terms of what some of you have heard up to date. This is a very big, very complex program, And I wanted you to get a sense of it because the new ones coming in, you can see, have a completely different perspective to the older generations. Oh, wait a minute, before I start this one, because of what I've put out on YouTube over the years, I got sent this link by a Chinese researcher. And many people have contact in their dreams. They'll go either out of body or they'll have interaction with the beings. And this lady, they say, was, I think she was a farmer, who in a dream was actually contacted. And she dreamt of a person playing a kind of instrument above a cloud. The name of the music was Please Welcome My Friend. When she awoke, she wanted to play the piano but didn't have one. At a friend's house, she was surprised she could play the piano by hammering out this music. Now, what I'm wanting you to understand is this is a frequency that she's playing, but watch how she plays it. Hold on. Sorry. Some of you may have seen the orbs and the streaks of light as she's playing. What we're talking about is frequency, and this is the way that she's bringing in that frequency. Never played the piano before, and it's all the black notes that she's playing as well. I'm focusing on the frequency because what I'm showing is, although it's understood in different ways in different countries, we're getting the similar theme, which is about manifesting a frequency that's come from somewhere else. Now I'm going to tell you about this one. This is about an 11-year-old child whose mother said that he plays on the piano. He's learning a piano, but sometimes he says he asks her to video him because he's playing certain songs. And these songs I give to people to wake them up, he says. He's 11 years old, he's Asperger's stroke ADHD, he channels music pieces from the ETs, he calls songs. At no time did Arthur practice them. He named each song before playing it as though he knew what was coming next. And that's one of the beings that he connects to. And these are some of the songs. Look at the names of them. Insanity, Decoding DNA, Learning, Meditation, Going Within Yourself, and Arrival. And I'm just going to let you hear, if I can get it started, all being well. The reason I wanted you to hear it, that one's called Decoding DNA. Now, why would he think of a song that says Decoding DNA? So what I did, because I was fortunate to know a musician who had similar experiences in post-war Japan, which is Juliana Oka. She's written about her own experiences. She lives in California now, and she plays certain music herself. What she explains to start with, it was 10 years old and a spirit being similar to angelic beings appeared to her. She was a small girl who looked the same age and the same height as herself. She came from the golden world and became my guardian spirit for a year and brought me lots of changes in my life. When I asked her about Arthur, this is what she said about the music, being a musician herself. I believe Arthur is contacted by the aliens of master musical spirits. It's amazing composition, it's genius. My alien experiences happened also in childhood and went far beyond. And she talks about this male angelic being that flew in front of her when she was in the other world and had long hair and soft shining golden gown. And he played a violin flying and dancing in the air, and he showed me techniques that were not usual for the violin. And she saw that as another way of bringing in the frequencies through her music. She's written a book about her otherworldly experiences. So what is there about frequency and music that is so important in terms of this activation of our DNA? The dormant DNA we're supposed to have 5% active DNA and 95% dormant, or they called it junk litter. The only thing with that is what they were really saying is they don't know what it does. And what the understanding is for those having encounters is there is being an activation of that dormant DNA. This is what happens when you play music with sand and the different forms that happen when you use sand with frequency. Darren, who allowed me to use these imagery, explains it this way. I'm going to show you what happens in the room when someone plays certain frequencies. And this was music he was playing. Music and how we can create the paraphysical doorways to higher evolution. The higher intelligences left humanity with musical cues, the frequency patterns encoded in ancient temples, so we can use them to create a positive contact culture. Darren gave a musical performance using sacred Hebrew words, demonstrating the sacred language that can create a portal. And I want you to see that as he plays, I'm then going to show you some images that someone with a digital camera took as he was playing this particular music, just to show you how that actually works. But first I'll let you hear some of the music in this one here. We can get it going. There he is playing the music. Now, start to look at the pictures. These were taken one after another as he's playing that music. That's the next one. You can start seeing things happening in the whole room. At the top there, here's the next one. He's completely covered by whatever's coming into the room. And that's what ends up. Ribbons of light, he calls the light beings. And here's an image of the light beings from a graphic designer called Josh. I astrally visited the large ship with many other souls. There were a huge variety of beings. They were playful, incredibly wise, and were able to shift their form at will from a humanoid shape to a ribbon of light. I saw them, and they seemed to be composed of effervescent bubbles of energy. And that is through frequency. And this is how frequency is altering our reality. And a lot of the symbols that people are drawing, that one's drawn by Antonio, a 17-year-old Kiwi lad, who is one of the new ones. And he's also his story I mentioned in my book. It should be borne in mind that the nature of extraterrestrial communication, that in a majority of instances, star visitors communicate with humans by telepathic transfer of mental images and concepts rather than by words and speech. Everything is made up of the same matter resonating at different harmonics, so the ETs are able to communicate with us, directing thought on subatomic levels and also activate the subconscious. These symbols are meant to communicate the nature of the magnetism. Oh, before I start this one, this is one of the young men that I tell his story in The Human. His name is Zach, and when this was done, he was probably 16, 17. ET Contact is a film by Caroline Corey where she's showing some of the science behind what you can do with energy to scientists. But she's also talking about ET Contact. And this young man and another one are going to demonstrate star languages. This has been something that's been part of the phenomena that's been dismissed up to recent times by many of those within the ufological field because it wasn't quantifiable, it wasn't solid and tangible enough. It was just something, this weird thing some people do. But I've found more and more of those that have contact, who start working with healing modalities, find themselves articulating these unusual languages we call star languages, light language, universal languages. There's many, many names given to them. What they are is a frequency, ultimately, and many of them use it for healing. Zach and many other of the new humans will articulate these kinds of languages. I had a mother tell me about her son who was 9. She says, my son speaks to me in light language, I speak back to him in light language, but the difference is he knows what he's saying to me and I don't know what I'm saying to him. But it's innate, it's an innate frequency, and which I believe is part of the DNA that's being activated, because language, again, changes the nature of DNA. So I'm going to let you hear him speak in this. Hold on a minute.
Sua set eleaka e sulu untuk ewe elo amana e sala am at elo ala onkish susum maetala elo lo tu kishisea elo at sa o saretan mana eku e kuleate su shase e mono tu kiawa ak etsuno etu etula kitsesa ese sala tu shasan. It doesn't exactly translate into English. The key to this language is that it's not transmitting data verbally through the mind. It's transmitting images through the voice. And dolphins do the same thing. Dolphins can transmit pictures to each other of what they're seeing through sonar.
There have been times where I have spoken a language that is very representative of a particular civilization or a particular group of beings, and when I would speak it, they would be there on the other side, listening and sending back information.
Can you give a message that you feel is important in the star language? That's you.
Okay, alright. I'll try this, okay?
One of the cases that was interesting to me was the mother wrote to me saying that her daughter had reacted to some of the star languages that she'd seen on YouTube. And the daughter said, but I can speak those languages too. And she said to her mother, there's 3 of them, but one of them heals water. When I speak of water, I can purify the water. And the mother told me that the water actually tasted differently. We're 70% water. So what do you think's going on when we hear those languages? It's all part of it. I'm hoping you're seeing the links now that I'm trying to demonstrate. What's fascinating now is I wanted more information about where do these languages come from. And if we actually have DNA from these intelligences that have created us, as I believe, then their languages are going to be encoded in the DNA, very likely. And interestingly, Marina, this beautiful young lady from Spain, has an understanding herself of some of the languages. And she said Arcturian is similar to Japanese, Chinese, and Vietnamese. Andromedan is similar to Spanish and the one that she speaks. Syrian sounds like Egyptian, Norwegian, or Nordic. And what I spoke is meaning reaching oneness in this light as a collective consciousness. So the only thing with the languages is not all of them are translatable. As I was told by a 7-year-old, would you believe, who looked at my book Awakening, and there's a script in there that she saw her mother looking at, and she said to her mother, I can read that. And her mother said, can you? And she proceeded to translate it into English. And the mother contacted me and I said, can I talk to your daughter? And over Skype, I said, your mother says that you can read this. And she said, oh, yes. She said, do you want it in the language or do you want it in English? And I said, could you do both? Oh, yes. So she proceeds to use the language. and then she translates it for me. And then I said to her, do you know where it's from? And she said, oh yes, that's from the Greys. Now this was all spontaneous. This is a 7-year-old little Australian girl. I'm going to let you hear a little bit from this young man who also does the scripts and the language and what have you. He's from England. I met him when I was in England last year. He couldn't wait to tell me about his ET experiences. And this is a whole new level. This isn't one where there's been hypnosis. This is conscious recall of the new generations. They don't need hypnosis. They already have a conscious understanding. I want you to get a sense of them by hearing just a little bit of how they articulate things.
So this one's about the language that I speak in and also the script that I write in. Now what's interesting about these two is that I have absolutely no idea what they are. I do have a clue as to what the script is, it being an ancient Grey script, I was once told, but that's all I was told, unfortunately. What's also interesting is I have no idea what either of them mean. I can't understand them. I can only, for example, speak it, and I can only, for example, write the script. So an example of the script would be something like this.
I've got it up.
That is basically, I was given a psychic image of this manuscript, and I tried to copy it the best I could. And on the left-hand side of the page, there is the writing with the strange box contraption in the center, and on the right-hand side of the page is this kind of grey alien pointing to the other side. Please excuse the drawing. And that is that. So that's just one example of the countless pieces of papers I have filled with that strange script. Another one being on a note of music and other strange contraptions. There's a bit more script on there as well.
This is very common.
So that is
to download this information.
So the language would be a sample of that. Would sound something like this. So that is something there.
I've heard some that sound very, very similar, and I've also come across individuals that can communicate with each other with these languages. So they're not all different. There are some that have got definite themes, but it's very much part of contact phenomena now. What's interesting about what Tracy Taylor says about her drawings and her understanding of the languages, and that first video you see up there is about her story. The purpose of the language and the symbols. She said this: I've come to realize they produce a brain activity similar to meditation. This understanding I was given by the beings. The language contains particular vibrational frequencies that assist with the awakening and clearing of the pineal system and allow more open access to cosmic frequencies, remembrance, and deep transformation and healing. So that's her understanding of the purpose of some of this. I'll show you this now. This is again a Chinese clip of a lady doing amazing artwork. And this artwork she does quite spontaneously, and with many of it, the complex drawings of star systems, she's never taken the pen off the paper the whole time she's doing the drawing. It's unicursal, just to give you some idea of how interesting it is. I'm just, sorry, oh geez. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know quite what happened there. Let's go back. Open you up. That was an interesting one, wasn't it? There we go. Try again. There you go. My point is, this is global.
这画是一笔画呢，还是不是一笔画？
好像是一笔，是的，是一笔画上的。
这个一笔吗？不停吗？这个下来？
对，不停。这样就是那种大的吧，待会儿我包一下那种大的下来给你们看。像那种大的嘛，好多都是就是一笔长的。像那一种，那一幅当然不是，那一幅是好多的。对，好多都是一笔。 还有就是说，反正就算不是一笔吧，起点和落点他们都是在一块。
起点和落点一定在一块吗？
反正好多都是，也不一定，只是说太多的。
就是笔画开比较少是吧？就是
反正开头在这儿嘛，落笔也在那。
This is happening all over the world. People are sending me their drawings of the beings, planets, their sense of coming from somewhere else, and also drawings they believe shift consciousness in the same way crop circles will do the same thing for some people. So it seems like whichever way it is, whether it's visually or auditory, with music, with languages, all of these seem to be frequencies that activate and awaken people. Here's one of the drawings from a wonderful artist who's had downloads of over 100 paintings on all levels of which has all these different levels of information. What I'm quoting here, a young man is an artist who says he believes he's from another dimension. And this is what he's saying about his artwork. I feel I'm mapping other dimensions that exist, like telling a story. There are patterns and I feel they are put together like a map. These shapes speak to me sometimes. It's almost like I can read them. Certain sounds make shapes within my painting. It changes people's perceptions who view them. It opens their minds. There's also information and they will get energy from it. So we're being exposed to a subconscious download of different kinds of information. This is a drawing by Tracy Taylor. And she's talking about the contact that she's had before she came here. Many now, even the children, talk about remembering as a soul coming into their human form and where they come from. And this is what she's saying here. My contact with non-human cosmic race occurred since before I was born. These beings were my family before I came to be in the earth domain. And I had a close relationship with them that was continued after my birth. And this is what the children and many adults are saying. I won't go through what Tom is saying here other than to see the descriptions that he's got of those beings. Now, many think that the beings people see are the greys, different forms of greys, the odd blue being, maybe reptilians and maybe mantis beings. There are multiple different types of humanoids, crystalline beings, energy beings, light beings. There is a matrix of different beings people interact with. Tom's talking about the Pleiadians and his special friend, Sonati, who's a mentor and teaches him about different other beings, ships, planets, and science. And he says that the Pleiadians are very scientific as well as spiritual. Creator beings he calls the crystal-like humanoids with no features. He says there's countless types of grey, tall, short, olive skin, tall, pinkish, tiny ones. One lady told me that she knew of 165 species of grey alone. Others, Arcturians, he knows about. And what's interesting is they have a real relationship with these beings as well. That's really important to state. Hold on. He also talks about his psychic abilities the same way that Marina does. He also talks about shadow people connecting and communicating with animals and other non-human beings, connection to spirits, to nature, also to trees, connecting to plants, healing with results, projection of consciousness, going to other space times. He talked about how he's flown spacecraft. Many talk about being taught how to do that and read star maps, and also moving into another body. And I'll talk a bit about that in a minute. Still learning about to control his telekinesis, levitation, manipulation of physical elements. There's Marina talking about psychic abilities herself. She can channel information from other dimensions. She energy reads people. She has precognition, seeing events before they happen. She has third eye vision. She can remote view, read energies, chakras, person's genetics, past lives. These are the upgrades of human. And every one of you has this potential, even if it's not awakened you right now. She talks about telepathy with other beings, but plants and crystals. And I want to explain a little bit more about our ability to connect to everything. One of the interesting things that a lot of the parents have written to me about their children is how aware their children are. And this lady from Canada, Samantha Mauer, says this: I feel grateful my children are having these experiences. They seldom become ill, and when they do, ETs have provided my children with healing. I have awakened on several occasions with beings in the room only to be put back to sleep. I saw them dropping symbols of energy into their bodies on one occasion, witnessing a small black triangular healing device upon the bed towards my son's side. In the free surveys of over 4,200 individuals, 42% had healing by ETs. You don't hear about that in the standard understanding of this phenomena at all. This is a whole new ball game. This was a healing prompted her to disclose her truth. This is Dr. Lena Olson. She's a molecular biologist, also an experiencer. And it was a mantid being that encouraged her to come out in the public. I call it coming out space closet. I asked for guidance. Should I come out and tell people about my experiences? And she had suffered severe dislocation of her atlas vertebra. Spontaneously, this vertebra rotated by itself into the correct position. She can swallow now without pain. She called this her sign, and so she's coming out as promised. And in Sweden, believe me, that's a big deal as a molecular biologist, because you just don't do that. In a lot of the Scandinavian countries, it is a real problem, and you're marginalized right away if you ever do that. So why have I put this one up? This here is something that many people who have encounters will see as a screen, which is the owl outside the window, or they may see Santa Claus, or cats with big eyes, or deer. This is often a screen for ET experiences. And you're going to see here the balls of light and how important they are as part of this phenomena. The other side there is one of the favorites is an owl that changed into an ET in front of the woman's eyes. So often they'll appear to you as something familiar until they feel you're ready to see them in their true form. This is an interesting one because I'm going to talk a little bit about the orbs. My picture was of a native warrior paying homage to an ET. The orb symbolizes light as opposed to darkness. This was drawn by a gentleman when he was 12 years old. So what's significant about all the orbs you're seeing in digital pictures these days? What may they be? And some of them I will give you a bit of an insight into what I think from my research they are, because this is all tied in to ET contact. This is what Kathy of 9 said about this light orb that she sees round her little brother, protecting her little brother. But first of all, I was doing a regression with a family in the Lake District in England. A whole car had been taken up into a craft, and they knew I was in England. They asked if I would do a regression to find out what happened. So I did the grandmother first, and then the 15-year-old young boy, her grandson. And he wasn't too keen to start with, but he knew he wanted to find out what was going on. And it was quite amazing, because as soon as he went into that space, he's talking to them, literally. And he's saying, why me? Oh, I chose to do it. I volunteered to come back. The two greys, they're still with me. They said to me, stay on track. I've been on Earth 27 times. And then he said, when the grey beings arrived in his garden, I can see orbs, whitey gold with two smaller ones. They're here to make me feel warm. They're family. The big one is Great Nana. The other is Nana's dad and Granddad's brother. They're here to reassure me and make me feel comfortable. I asked him how he knew what the orbs of light were, and John said he just knew. I asked, why are they there too? And he said, they've come with the greys to support me and make me feel comfortable, so I wouldn't be frightened. John continued, and when the greys left, the orbs of light went into the spacecraft too. That's a really significant one, because my research is indicating now that when we leave our body, we leave in an orb of light, some call the Merkaba. Let me show you something else very interesting. This footage was given to me by a gentleman, Jim Schaefer. I think he lives in Canada. And he was watching television, relaxing in his bedroom at home, but was leaving his iPhone on to film because he got a lot of unusual phenomena. The background was that he'd just found out that he had a cancer, a tumor on his neck. and he asked the ETs if they would heal him. Then, this is what unfolded. You're going to see the orb as it comes out and into his body. That's the orb itself. And then I'll explain what happened after this event. See the orb coming in. There it is. And going into his body. You'll see it slowed up in a minute. Keep your eye down on the bottom there again, and slowed up this time, you'll see it. There it is. It goes into his body. He went to sleep, and when he woke up, the tumour was gone. And this is what he said. I was so shocked I didn't sleep until the following morning, then slept until 5 p.m. I woke up and noticed immediately the tumour was completely gone in an 18-hour time span. I believe they wanted me to witness and record this event. I don't know why I was healed. Maybe because I had unusual genetics, Rh negative. That's a very common pattern with people who have experiences. I've been changed and I'm very empathic now towards animals and caring about the state of the planet, etc. And it is the change that is the significant thing here. After people have contact, they change in their focus, materialistic values, want to live more holistic lifestyles. Sometimes will go and live on, very simple lives, etc. They find that often they have advanced psychic abilities. These are all the changes that happen after contact. And when somebody says, well, where's the piece of the craft? What you're seeing is a transformation of that individual over a period of time after their contact. That is the reality. I'll show you another interesting one. The child in the cot was very sick, and the parents was looking through the child monitor because they wanted to make sure the child was okay. And what's interesting in both these, you'll actually see an orb around the cot and on the top one as well. Have a look, and you'll see the orb. There it is, around the cot. The whole night this orb was around the cot. And you can see it going in and out the whole time. And the parents couldn't believe what they were seeing, but they filmed it. And the top one I'll show you again. You'll see it here as well, but it's harder to see because it's actually in the cot, and you'll see it coming out. It's the same footage, but just a different angle. In a minute you'll see there's the orb coming towards the railings of the cot itself. The whole night. The next morning the child is well. So there's a lot to do. I'm not saying all orbs are intelligences, but certainly some of them are. Some of us, when we go out of body, I believe, that's the form we take when we go out of body. And so we have got spirits traveling that way. Energy centers on the planet have a significant influence on us, even if you're not aware of it. I was talking to Eli, who's 9 years old, who told me when he wanted to talk to me that the reason he was talking to me was because of my frequency. He then proceeded to tell me he was from the planet Orion, that he was a light physicist working on time travel technology. He said when he goes to energy centers like these, he actually has downloads. And he said, in Palenque, I received names of star systems and coordinates. In Chichen Itza, I received information about pyramids and water. Water is the power source energy, and the pyramid equals the portal when water is near. So he's basically saying that when you have water around a lot of the pyramids, plus a higher consciousness, you can travel to other places. If water is near the pyramid, it charges it up, and you can go home. You can go into it with a special code. I think of frequency. You go into your mind and tune into the frequency. So it's all to do with consciousness and what's happening with us as a species. Dr. Lena Olson, her understanding of us and what's going on, she's talking about the biocontainer, which is the body, is partly controlled through the DNA, the crystalline formation, encoded message. DNA is just the responder. The frequencies are from many origins. Some of them might be aimed specifically at halting or speeding up human evolution. They travel through the body and hit the DNA like fingers hit the keys of a piano. The biocontainer is just one of 3 parts to decide how the frequencies will be received and implemented. The other 2 important parts are mind and soul. The soul is the energy container, which moves from body to body between lives and dimensions and worlds. So this is taking us into our essence, our consciousness. So now what is the new human? If my information is correct, there'll be 12 different main groups of new DNA people. It corresponds to 12 different main groups of ET, alien, DNA donors, so 9 more to go. There, our DNA is activated mainly by remote control and frequencies. So it's like putting a virus in a software computer program. They will give off energy patterns that spread to their surroundings, almost like flu or GMO genes that contaminate via frequency patterns. This is why so many people now are noting a shift in consciousness, a shift in focus, because this is what's happening on the planet now. Dr. William Brown is a molecular biologist who contacted me about 10 years ago now. And he is saying this: the modification of human DNA is more like remodeling the genome to make dormant regions accessible again, occurring right now in utero and producing new humans. I believe research would show dormant genetic regions are being reintegrated into the biological systems, occurring in all of us to produce expanded awareness, brains working faster, and we have more access to information in the beginning. Now we get into the new human with our generations of children that are appearing to be, for some anyway, dysfunctional. I am posing another completely different hypothesis. The exponential increase in autistic, ADD, and indigo children, they have new genetic architecture which allows them to see the world in a multi-dimensional fashion. Now, this is Dr. William Brown saying this, not me. The vast amounts of information and functional capacity is already there. I believe they know what is being taught. The reason that I resonated to this information is because those that were having experiences, I noticed they were going through family lines, either father or mother or both. Granddad, great-granddad was maybe always interested in UFOs or whatever. Then the mother, and then the father. And what I noticed was that a lot of the children of experiencers, as I call them, those having contact, were having children that appeared to be autistic, or having ADHD, or having dyslexia, or having Asperger's. And I thought, well, if they're actually upgrading humans, why would we have these so-called dysfunctions? Until I realized there was something else going on, and they're wired differently. That doesn't mean they're dysfunctional. It means we don't yet understand how they operate. And I'm going to explain that a little bit more in a minute. This is a gentleman called Neil Gold. He lives in Hong Kong, and he wrote the book Close Encounters of the ADHD Kind. And he retranslated ADHD into always dialed into higher dimensions. These new kids are dialed into higher dimensions. And this is what he said about his own ADHD. My book is about what happened in my extra-dimensional world where I met the beings of light. Being symptomatic of ADHD, I'm not limited to the square template of the universe. I'm wired to the multidimensional universe. My internet browser can browse into chaos, be it on Earth or the multiverse. I can perceive hidden layers of order and make sense of it all. Most folk without this browser cannot do this. What he's saying is that he always experienced reality in a multidimensional fashion. And the problem is for us older models, we've been programmed into a 3D reality where we're told, unless you can feel it, see it, touch it, smell it, hear it, it isn't real. So because of that, we shut down and not utilized our multidimensional awareness. So it seems like these intelligences have wired the new generations differently, so they cannot be programmed in the same way. So they retain their awareness. And this is what I believe with all of them. Now, Dr. Lena Olson, I do want you to hear, because she's explaining it in the fact that she's coming from her own understanding as a scientist as well as an experiencer. And she tested herself for higher sensitivities, such as above normal sensory cells in the skin, sound frequencies above normal. All of those things are what our new generations can perceive. Aware of minute differences in the shades of color than normal. Taste and smell are enhanced. Sensitive to all frequencies, can feel overwhelmed by sensory overload. sensitive to radioactive radiation. I want you to hear a little bit about what she says because I think it's important. Hold on a minute. Okay, hold on a minute. Where are we? There we are. So now I will talk a little bit about the letter person and the diet and what natural supplements I recommend. The typical letter person. Well, all people, all humans are different. They are individuals. And that is also the same, true for the letter person. All letter persons are different, but if I should say something that combines the need for the letter person and also the typical letter person, all 5 senses are increased. That is hearing, smell, taste, senses, and sight. And if I take me as an example, I have double amount of sensory cells for pressure in my skin. And that makes it very difficult for me to have clothes that are tight or wrinkled or itching. And when it comes to taste, I have an increased ability to differ between different tastes, different types of taste. And that makes it difficult also to eat anything, especially if it tastes mediocre. Hearing, I have an increased ability to hear both below and above the normal hearing area. And smell, well, that's also increased. So it's difficult for me to be in a room where people smell a lot, even if it's perfume. It can be overwhelming. And increase in all senses also increase the activity in the nervous system and in the brain, which make it a little bit overload. So also the increased activity in the brain makes it more difficult for me to fall asleep or to be tired, to feel tired in the evening. And also we have a little bit more supernatural abilities like intuition and telepathy. It's not uncommon in the world of a letter person, or feeling the energies, or having precognition. So all this overload in the nervous system and in the brain can make the letter person very stressed. So when we are stressed, a letter person actually use more of the vitamins, minerals that we ingest. So because of that, I usually recommend all these vitamins and minerals for the letter person. But especially when we are stressed, we need the organic sulfur. It helps in different enzymatic reactions. And I also recommend all vitamin Bs. And that is for the nervous system and the brain, and also for the sleep. Because some of the vitamin Bs are needed to transform tryptophan into serotonin, the happy hormone. And if we are too in the flow, all the tryptophan goes to serotonin. But if we are mellowing out, the tryptophan goes to melatonin, and that makes us sleepy.
There's lots more, and she goes into how diet is important and why a lot of the children that are diagnosed as ADHD, how you can help them holistically through organic foods,
understanding they operate at a faster speed, a higher frequency. So they need, as I say, as she's saying there, more vitamins of certain types of vitamins, vitamin B and what have you. It's all in details in the book. But what I wanted you to realize that she's explored this and for herself, because she is an experiencer as well, that she's actually tested this all in herself, so that she's coming from both a scientist and an experiencer. So we're not getting just saying this is just an intuition. This is her knowing because she's tested it all as well. So very, very important how we can help the children, as well as any adults that have been told they're ADHD or any of these other ones. There are certain things we can do to make a difference, to help them manage their awareness. Dr. William Brown is saying something else that needs to be said. Transgenerational information is encoded within the atomic structure of the DNA molecule. I believe they, the new humans, are accessing the Akashic record within the DNA molecule. As the efficiency of our DNA increases, more of this information becomes available to them. The hybrids are altogether a new species of human. And I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of what is now considered a hybrid, and not just those that are, appear to be on the craft. Many of the new generations that are contacting me, and I'm getting contacted by parents with children that say they're hybrids, or I'm getting someone like Marina who indicated she knew she was a hybrid. There's a lot of information going out there, and for me, it's listening to the many stories about how they understand themselves. It's not for me to say what they are. They tell me what they understand about themselves. Marina's a very good example. So what she's saying here is this. Star seeds have two types of DNA from the human parents, and metaphysical DNA, what she's talking about, if you like, the essence or soul genetics, she calls them. They're blended together, vibrating at high frequency, and express it in their ET-DNA. The star seed awakens to their multidimensional self or true essence, and she's saying of unconditional love, and reconnects to its origins. So somebody says, I now sense that maybe my family is Andromedan or from Arcturus, or I feel I'm connected to the Pleiadians. They've reached a level where their activation of the DNA is tapping into the genetics of that particular input into their DNA. The star seed has added genetics such as my mother, where she's saying how she really relates to being a hybrid was that when her mother was pregnant, they genetically altered me with ET-DNA, so I connect more to this higher consciousness and my star origin. So she's saying she's having an added input from so she's Andromedan, Arcturus, and Grey connection is how she understands herself. And the image below is an Arcturian woman, which is one that she speaks about. Zach, who you saw speaking the language, is saying this about his understanding of being a hybrid, and he's in The New Human. I was told I was hybridized for expressing the human genome. There are many different agendas on this planet. Each species has their own programs. What I've been told about the hybridization is that it's to expedite the evolution of humanity. It is not like hybridizing us by replacing their DNA with theirs. We already have their DNA in our bodies. They're activating it through frequency and light manipulation. The consciousness we are vibrating at is the attributes we'll take on. So if someone is strongly connecting to the Arcturians, they will take on Arcturian attributes, etc., etc. So as our frequency rises, our DNA is activated, will relate to that particular species. The hybrids are part of the new human archetype we're evolving into. The labels don't matter. The humans are evolving. Our DNA is advancing, and we're expressing that in any way possible. It's contained in our DNA. There is scalar imprinted memories of all the other beings in our day that our DNA has passed through. We express it through the new human template. We can express it in the hybrid form, and some will know or feel they're an indigo or a crystal. That is the energy or the energy form they're expressing, and that comes as a new understanding. This gorgeous lady here, Charmaine, is someone who told me in England when I met her that she was a hybrid, human stroke reptilian, and she was very comfortable with that. She's the most delightful lady, and she's in a book, Meet the Hybrids. There's 7 stories of different people that have talked about their hybrid nature and how they understand themselves. And this is what she said. There are various reasons for the hybrid program. They depend on different species. And if they're involved with the military, that's a whole new ballgame. But I won't get into at this moment. I believe one purpose for the creation of hybrids is to bridge the divide between ETs and humans, taking positive attributes from each race for certain purposes, such as healing, higher intelligence, stronger spiritual connection, and so forth. So this is all part of it. And these different beings here, Marina, as a 70-year-old, drew these beings for me to explain a little bit more about the being she's interacting with. The purple is my female Arcturian guide. I first saw her in dreams. The green one is my hybrid child, that's the top one here. The genetic mix between my human DNA, grey, mantid, and Arcturian energy. The brown-eyed being, which is to the right there, is a human Zeta. This is a grey hybrid. The long-haired male is a Pleiadian guide, and below is another Zeta that she saw in her dreams. So this is the complexity of this. You can't pick up a grey and say, well, I know what all greys are up to, or a mantid and saying this. It's like taking a human being and saying, well, that represents all humans. It's not like that. This is hugely complex, and I'm giving you a big program tonight. I hope that some of it makes sense to you, or at least look into the fact that this is what's going on. This lady from Australia said this: I've had a number of visions and apparitions of my half-human children. I recall many experiences of waking up at times crying, having left these children somewhere and being disturbed by it. Many human women have told me about their hybrid children on board craft. They're often taken there to meet them and often will get a sense of them afterwards. She's talking about this one not really looking as though she's grown up, and she's seen more of her children. She looks still very childlike. She also was shown how they're using a lot of this genetic engineering for other planets. She was with a tall mantis, benevolent. Now remember, she's saying benevolent reptilians here, so they're not all scary and negative, and that's really important as well. They took me to a massive lab that looked, it was like an inside of a cave-like structure. There were thousands of incubated hybrids in them. They looked fully grown. They had wings. It was hard to see their color because the lighting was dim. The mantis told me they, the mantis, were the keepers of the universe. They had blueprints and DNA from every species that has ever existed, including extinct species on our planet. They're known as master geneticists. They populate planets with life forms throughout the universe. They said they were proficient at genetically modifying humans. They saw their roles as master geneticists. And I've been told this by children, as well as teenagers that have been given this information. So it's not a new one. This has been verified by others. The images you're seeing there is a being that this lady in Brazil, who was a former air hostess, so when she was a child, saw this tall being, cat-like being, feline being, which other people connect to. Lion beings are another one, where she felt like a mother energy. And she also saw several other types of beings, which she said came to her room and they went to a spaceship in the sky, teaching me about spirituality, about chakras. And so she was learning a lot of information about healing. But she also met one of her hybrid children, and it was in a hotel corridor. And she was about to go to breakfast on her way to work, and she saw this little girl. And she said what was, to start with, she was saying, you know, to the little girl, well, where's your mother? Because she thought she was lost. And as the little girl turned to face her, she saw this strange feline face, and she thought in her head, oh my God, it's a monster. And she ran away. Some years later, she went on board craft, and there was this little girl she realized was one of her own hybrid daughters. And all these others were her hybrid children. But she told me recently, when she was on board the craft, her human daughter was playing with her hybrid sister on board craft, her hybrid siblings. So we're looking at a really complex program of interaction that's going on. And it is so complex, it's continually surprising me. I put this one up because I just wanted to show you an interesting photograph of this young girl who was, the mother was there just taking pictures, and she said, I think my daughter was showing me her levitation, because you can see both feet were actually off the ground as well. But what they're taught on board craft and on other planets is levitation, psychic abilities, quantum physics, awareness and connection to all sentient life, spatial geometry of thought, how to operate multidimensional reality, states of consciousness, how to communicate and interact with interdimensional other non-human intelligences, telepathy, telekinesis, mind melds, multidimensional ecology, directed thought and emotion, healing, working with energy, true history of man's origins, etc., and many, many others, time travel technology. These are some of the... Yes, Mum, I finished magic school. What did you learn? Everything, mostly science. I learned about space, gravity, time controls everything, time controls all. My son says that a white light comes through the window and suddenly he's there at school. All of 3. There's another one here. A gentleman wrote to me and said, your website came as a revelation. I never had heard of anyone else having alien classes as a child. It's been a blessing and a curse all my life. I remember being given physics classes at the age of 3 or 4 in a classroom of children of similar age. I remember the details well and have had an avid interest in physics since. I used to feel I was just crazy, did a year of philosophy and science, amazed myself and my teacher by the fact I could just answer any question I never studied. This is not a one-off. This is happening across the globe. It's happening to all sorts of people. Doesn't matter where they're from, what their parents do. It can be literally in any place you can mention. This is an image from Marina of her time on spacecraft in a classroom. She said the teachers' star guides were humanoid, as she's showing there. Taught the relationship between the pi number and the Fibonacci sequence in geometry, numerology. The drawing shows the moment when I replied to a question. They were happy for us to participate. They don't teach like an Earth school teacher. Their education is interactive and telepathic, creative and joyous. They took the spaceship around some beautiful places in space for us to observe and enjoy. Why do you think some of your kids are bored in traditional human schools? Well, this is why. This is a download of physics from Marina. I'm only going to mention a few of them for you. The nature of particle physics. She was learning spiritual understanding and its connection to the structure of creation, geometry, science, consciousness, synchronicity of logic, spirituality and perception, space energy and frequency. You can see the complexity of the things that are being taught to these children. And this is global. Spacecraft and the hybrid friend. This is a 5-year-old drawing the spacecraft as she's taken to Mars. Now these children are taken to various star systems. This one's interesting because she's talking about her hybrid friend, which you can see there. She's saying this: we're in a spaceship, the craft is grey and the windows are blue. There's one of our special friends, it's a girl, her hair is half girl and her body is special friend. The colour of her hair is light brown, she has thin hair. She talks about her special friend as a hybrid body. Her hair on her head is not as thick as her particular hair. Her home is cold and everyone is leaving and Mars is their new home. She's not the only one that gets taken to Mars. Another young girl, a 7-year-old, Fern, is talking about her trip to Mars and the being that's on Mars, and also about domes on Mars, which she's drawn. And here in the bottom picture is domes that are taken by the Mars rover. She's actually drawn them. She explains about this being, which is a mantid being. And she says that the green alien is rare and doesn't talk at all. So she's got a real understanding of her time taken to Mars. Here's another one. Alice told her parents that she'd been to Mars. This is her drawing of going to Mars. And she said it was a desert. We don't learn anything we learn on Earth. The Martians she sees look like typical greys, head slightly larger than humans. And we do know now there's a lot of anomalies on Mars. I don't know if any of you found them, and have a look for yourself. Here's some of the anomalies on Mars. And this is what a physicist, Dr. John Brandenburg, believes, that an ancient civilization was wiped out by a nuclear attack by another race. 16-year-old Zach, the one that came with the light language, told me that in his past life he was on Mars and he used to build interstellar craft, and he still remembers how to do it. This is an interesting one because, again, it's a 4-year-old explaining the image, which is Clarice. And listen to what she said. So she said, people live inside the moon. Many of the children have told me that it's hollow. There are beings under the surface of the moon. And Clarice is the alien that this little girl is talking about. So she said, where did you hide? On the spacecraft, the little girl says. It has doors that slide open when you walk near them. So the mum says, did the spacecraft make noise? The little girl says, no, it didn't make any noise at all. Did you play while it was parked? Oh no, we went up in the sky. We went up really fast. We went to their home. What is their planet that has the rings around it? And the mother says, it's Saturn. Yes, Saturn. It didn't take long to get there. And you know, all planets go around the sun. I went to Clarice's house. It's not too far away because there's an X where they know where to land. What were you wearing, says the mother. A helmet. The suits come in different colors and the helmet's not heavy. What's it like on Saturn, says the mother. It's very cold. There's ice all around the ground and rocks. Is it sunny? Oh no, it's always nighttime on Saturn because it can't see the sun. It's too far away. Now remember, this is a 4-year-old.
Wow.
We left something on the moon. Many of you may know there's anomalies on the moon as well. And if you go and have a look for yourself. Peter, who's ADHD, said this. Something happened before I died. I had a peaceful death and we left something on the moon to help Earth. I was sent to help, but it worked with consciousness. A portal used magnetic energy to physically move people or ships and also work as a time machine, which would only send your consciousness to a different time. And he talked about this helping consciousness now. And we know that there's lots of artifacts on the moon. Anyone who wants to go and have a look will find out. So what can we do to help these new aware children? And I'm going to give you just a brief overview. This is Dr. Patricia Bernstein. She's got a PhD in education. She lives in Western Australia. And she's one of the older models of human, if you like, that knows about these children. And she is very concerned about how we teach them. They will not be satisfied with schools that were designed according to a 19th century model. The new schools need to accommodate children that are aware of their multidimensional essence. The educational pyramid needs to be turned upside down with the new children leading the way into a new system. Only awareness is educatable. So we have to really look at what we're doing. And I'm going to show you very briefly one of the ways we can activate their consciousness. There's a program called Extraocular Vision. You can teach children, they've been teaching children between 6 and 12 how to see without physical sight, to expand their consciousness. And this can be done in a few lessons. And this was done in my location in Western Australia, in Queensland. This lady, Karen Osborne, teaches it all over the world. And with the children particularly, within a few lessons, they can literally see without sight. And you're going to see just a few minutes of this little girl colouring with these special goggles that she's wearing after being taught over a weekend how to do it. And I'll just give you a very brief, because I know it's getting late. I don't want to... There you go.
Hi, do you want to tell us your name? What's your name? What you doing?
Drawing of flowers, Encoded.
Yeah, it's looking so lovely. It's a wildflower garden with the native Australian flora. It's the most diversity buried in the world. And we've got butterflies there too. Then you come up and just have a little look. If you bring the camera up, you can see all the colouring in. It might be the easiest thing to do. I didn't bring very many colours along, which means we've got a few limited colours, and the blue's a little bit broken as well. But
could you read something on the page? Would that be okay?
Native Australian flora is the most diverse and varied in the world. Spectacular flowers such as the unique red and yellow kangaroo paw are delighted to see.
Yay! Perfect!
She also identifies things they hold in front of her, and she also reads cards. And this was only after a weekend of being shown how to do this, literally expanding her consciousness so she could see 360 degrees. And this is being taught in India, it's been taught in Mexico. This is what we can do as well. It might take us a little bit longer. How do I connect to my real home? You'll notice that orb's got a nice little face in it. That's one of the orbs I took. So this young 9-year-old is someone who talks about his real home, and it's not here. He's talking about where he's from. And he said, how I connect to my real home, I use my spiritual mind. This is a 9-year-old saying this. Some people in my spiritual home don't exist anymore. I can still connect through spirit, so I talk through spirit. I do not talk through human as I do to another person. I say it through my soul. You will not hear me say it. I do it through my mind and soul mixed together. I can talk to other souls exactly like mine. This is how I connect to my real home. He said, so I do have a home here, but I also have a home where I really belong. That's how I connect. He also sees through, with his eyes closed, and sees through other people's eyes. He goes out of body to protect other people from negative beings. In other words, what he told me was he was trained to deal with negative energies, and now because he knows what to do, at night he will go astrally to where other children are being disturbed by these beings, and he will deal with them. And he's 9 years old. This is an image of another 7-year-old in Australia who's done a picture of what he looks like as a spirit. He told me, before I came to Earth, I was just a will-o'-the-wisp spirit in angel form. I programmed my life on Earth and decided on my star mission and found myself in Mummy's tummy. My home star is planet Elba. He was visited by beings that look like skeletons. I have incarnated as animal as well as human at the time of the dinosaurs. He told me all this himself. He draws unusual symbols, visits other places beyond his consciousness. He connects people to their angels. He perceives energy fields, has traveled to the moon in another life. He told me he can go to the 9th dimension. And he also told me that the grey beings can't go further than the 6th dimension. He was very clear on that. And he also told me that he can use the runes to go through as a portal to go to other planets as long as he knows their mathematical number, in other words, their frequency. This is a 7-year-old explaining this to me, just so that you get some idea of the age. This is recent. This is another 10-year-old in Australia. And the being that you're seeing there was what he was like on the planet he came from. And I asked him what the symbols were, and he actually said to me the top symbol is him, the other two are his roots, and the bottom one is, hold on a minute, what does it say here? The planet he's from. But that's what he looked like on the planet he came from. And he said he remembers his previous body as an ET with blue body. His planet was destroyed, and he was saved by a flying craft. And he's come as a center seed to come to and what he explained as a center seed, he said he's able to connect directly to the core of the planet, to heal the planet, and its pollution is his mission. Now these are big claims. Remember, this is a 10-year-old. That was the questionnaire that I sent to his parents. You can see he's more or less filled it all in. Look what he's saying about this. He recalls choosing his mother and going through a portal to be born. Panicked to begin with, thinking he'd landed in the wrong tummy, but then realized it was okay. It's his first Earth life, and he told me he'd picked a mother that had been on this planet many lifetimes because she will help him. He speaks a light language, and it's triggered by somebody who needs healing. Telepathy is the root patterns in his head. He speaks about beings that created this dimension. He works with crystals. He can see interdimensionally with his eyes open. He mentions the power of triangles and invention of a power device, awareness of many dimensions and timelines, struggles to focus on one timeline where his physical body is. Center seed means the ability to heal the planet of its pollution, rebalance the environment for everyone, not just humans, but animals and plants. Now, this is a 10-year-old explaining this to me. Another little 7-year-old told me that when he held a meteorite, it spoke to him in his mind. he was able to tell me what it was saying. Another 10-year-old told me that he came through a portal in the sun, and that many of them are talking about other dimensions. Here's Marina again. She's talking about some of her past lives and how she understands some of her past lives, to give you some idea of times in Egypt, for example. And she explains how each of us have encoded in us the wake-up call. And it just depends on you and your soul journey when that will be. For her, it was at 15. She said she became obsessed with ET, science, quantum physics, and questioned everything. How was the universe created? What is existence? And so on. Felt a strong shift in her consciousness. I came to understand that most starseeds come with a wake-up call encoded in their DNA, so they wake up at a determined point in their lifetime and align to their mission. Before I conclude, I've got just a few slides left. One of the things I have discovered is the soul doesn't necessarily stay in the physical body all the time. At night, we go astrally traveling, many of us, out of body, with our essence, our consciousness, our soul, our spirit, whatever name you want to give it. This 8-year-old told me, because his family were the mantis beings and they were his ancestors, and when he died, he was going back to being a mantis. He explained that when he went on board craft, some of the time, he would evaporate into the mantid form. He would go into their form for a time, and then he would come back into his human container when he came back down to Earth. So what it's telling us is we don't always stay in our human container in this life. We may, in fact, go to other realities, for example, and this is what has been really interesting, is others have spoken that they will go into maybe a grey form or another form on board craft for a task, and then come back into their human form. And I asked one young lady, what does it look like when you move from one to the other? And she described a ball of light. So if you want to ask about the balls of light, there is one of the examples. That's another orb I took, and if you notice, there's a really interesting little thing that looks like a little ET. That was one of the ones I took with my camera. So one more thing, and I think you'll have had a pretty good package. Kaza, this young lady, is a mother of 4 kids now. She had 2 children when she was told that she had a fatal disease, an autoimmune disease, and she was sent home to die. And she didn't know what was going on, but she was visited by light beings who healed her. And they said, would you assist with what's going on the planet? And she agreed. And for a little while, she was well, but then it became too much. And then what she was aware happened, that she had many near-death experiences and was shifted. And the lady that calls herself Kaza now says she's from the 13th dimension and she's a walk-in. And some call them walk-ins a soul swap. And what she explains is the reason many of those from other dimensions are coming into human form is because it's to stop us being confronted by too many strange beings, that if they're in human form, they can interact with us and teach us. And so she's come in as a teacher. She said, my energy form, if you like, you know, there's no form with a 13th dimensional being. They're an intelligence. And so she's come in, and that's how she understands herself now. And you can take that or leave it, it's up to you. But her awareness is quite amazing. And she's had 2 children since. So she's got 4 children. But it's been very hard for her because she comes from a Chinese culture. And they often can be find it very difficult to take on sometimes some of these new concepts because of the cultural side to it. So she's had a really difficult journey. I'm presenting it to you because I'm meeting many that see themselves as walk-ins or soul swaps. And there's more to the walk-ins if you want to know about it, but I don't want to blitz you with too much. So, okay, so I'm going to give you just an overview now. Zach says this, and if you've heard the word crystal, indigo, or whatever, this is how he explains it. The new human that fits because we're going into something that's new for us. The labels such as crystal child, indigo child, rainbow child is not describing the person, but the person's expression of self. The indigo child has come in as the warrior to break down the system, that is wrong and needs to change. The crystalline child has the aura of love and peace, the healer, the medium to bring in the sight. The rainbow child has the energy of the creator, leader, kingship, personality. It's a vibrational difference. It's a term humans are using only because of limited understanding. These labels are just resonating to the frequency of those attributes and not staying with it. Animals are also evolving. So we're all shifting. This is how the new human manifests. This young 5-year-old arranged this for himself to meditate. The mother never taught him meditation, and he explained to her this. He said each corner of the pyramid represented specific feelings. A clear quartz crystal ball on the point of the pyramid represented love, and said that is what he was focusing on during his meditation. This was what he had already arranged for himself. So what does the new human, the new ones coming in from 2000 saying? They don't need governments to tell them we're not alone. They already know that we're not alone. They know the planet is in dire shape, both ecologically and spiritually. They know we're lied to and manipulated. They know we're educated and programmed into a limiting and limited reality. They know about covert technologies which control the public and the fear-based mindset. They're aware of their psychic abilities. They know about the many extraterrestrial species visiting our planet. They're here to wake us up. What Dr. Olson is saying is it's a combination of genetically improved bodies. These are the new kids and why they can't take many of the polluted foods that we have. A combination with souls from different places in our universe incarnating in improved bodies. The souls have different frequencies and vibrations depending on their status. That plays a role in activation of the DNA in that particular body. I believe we're also to have to take into account the collective soul of Homo sapiens. Many of you may be aware of Dolores Cannon. She's written many books of her hypnosis, talking about the DNA has been expanded to the 12 strands. More in those that are involved in ufology will remember he's passed away recently, Command Sergeant Robert Dean, who was in the military, a most beautiful gentleman who admitted in his latter years that he'd been on board spacecraft. And he said this, "We are in transition. I've seen the future, and it's glorious." And he also said he was told Homo sapiens originate from 12 different species of non-human intelligence. Dr. Olson says this, if my information is correct, then there will be 12 different main species of DNA people. So this is what I mentioned to you before. It's exactly the same thing. This young 8-year-old said to me, "Mary, the mantid is my family. They're my ancestors, and I will go back to my mantid ancestors when I die." "Mum, we are the aliens," an 8-year-old said. This young lady here is talking about Homo novus, what we are incarnating into. We are a species in transition, she was told. These are the beings she interacts with, the energy beings and many others, her stories in The New Human. What she's saying is Homo novus, the advanced being, is trying to wake up humanity through drawings, music, sacred sites, all born after 2000 are Homo noeticus. They're literally the next step. They will be able to do things that Homo sapiens never dreamed of, and many are activated in their pubescent years, just as Marina was activated. So it's a new dawn for our species. And one last thing, the cosmic agenda. Some of these are the statistics that we've discovered through 4,200 people across the globe. Some of these statistics will change the way ufology operates. We've got 86% have a sense of purpose and mission. 73, their close encounters was highly positive. 74% thinking more holistically. Sense of compassion greatly increased. Felt more connected to all living things, 91%. 73% believe we're living through a time of greatly accelerated spiritual evolution. Remember, this is a huge number that is saying the same thing. 72% believe their encounters occurred to awaken them to the existence of larger cosmic forces. 72% that these forces are to transform humanity into a more self-aware spiritual species. 85% experienced psycho-spiritual transformation. 79% we are on the verge of a new age, and non-human intelligences have a role in this. This is what we've discovered. And this is what Kathy told me when I had a Skype interview with her. And I found it quite profound because she said to me this: human beings have no idea how amazing they are, but they have to believe it first. So there you are, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Do you want to take some questions?
I will take questions, absolutely. Yes.
What kind of camera do you take to take the orb?
Ones that are not too costly, because the more costly ones have too many filters. Get the cheap cameras because they don't have the filters, and then you'll get the orbs. And I'll tell you a little experiment I did. You can try it. I know that a lot of them are conscious and they'll respond to you. And so I went out on my balcony one night, and I said to my friend, get the camera out. I don't see them, but I can sense when they're there. So I said, come on, guys, show yourself. Come on, it's a favor, talk really nicely. And I just stayed for a few minutes until I felt there was one there. And I said to my friend, take the picture now. And a meter from my hand was an orb. So we have them all around us. When you saw the music, when they speak the star language, I've got video of a lady speaking the star language, and there's orbs flying everywhere. They're just going all over the show. It's quite incredible how they react. And as you saw with her playing the music, I didn't, unfortunately, my laser light didn't show you, but I could have actually pointed out all the orbs that were around. They're around us all the time. Often when I've been speaking, people have seen orbs behind me, but other people speaking on higher frequencies, often these orbs are shown as well. So I believe some of them are certainly us when we're out of body. I believe some of them are spirits of the family and those that have passed on. Sometimes ships can come out, spaceships can come out of orbs as well. So there's a lot of other things that they can be. And there's some brilliant books now talking about, no, they aren't, dust particles. No, they aren't raindrops and whatever. There's something called the Orb Project, where a scientist from Germany actually examined all of these, and he was absolutely convinced that these are intelligent. So try it yourself. It's actually a lot of fun, but just be open to the fact that call them in. I actually asked for a blue one once.
There's some infrared cameras that shoot them
in
video.
Oh, you can get them in video. I actually requested a particular color once, and I said, come on, guys, I'd love to see a blue one, I really would. Would you do me a favor? The next photograph I took was there was a blue orb right directly in front of me. So you can. What I wanted to show you today was some of the tangible reality, because even though we can sort of believe it, it really makes a difference when you can actually see what is actually happening on another level. And our cameras are showing us all the time, that kind of thing.
Your phone.
Yeah, and some phones, not all phones, because some of them are so highly sophisticated now. They've got they don't make it easy to take them. Yes.
That's kind of like an interesting question. I'm not sure if you can answer it, but I'm noticing it more so even right now, is that I'm just like incredibly itchy.
Yeah.
What is there anything that stems from at all?
Do you find it
like
when you see
like jolts and pulses?
Well, sometimes because I should have. I make a joke sometimes and saying, if you don't want your paradigm changed, leave now, because a lot of the things I've been showing you and letting you hear are frequencies, and I'm taking no responsibility for how this changes your reality. And I do that as a joke, but I mean it, because there's frequencies on here, and maybe that's your body responding to the different frequencies that you're seeing. In fact, one lady who was a nurse was listening to the languages, and the next thing, she came up to me and she started writing all the script that she didn't even know was happening. And she said, look what I've just found myself doing after listening to that language. So depending on where you are at in terms of your awareness depends on how the frequencies are going to affect you. Lots of people get buzzes of energy going through them when they're as well. Sorry, yeah.
One quick more. So with these awakenings, are these awakenings natural things that are happening that are predestined to happen, or are they happening with the contact around certain beings?
That's an interesting question. What Marina's saying is that she believes that as a soul, before we come in, we've orchestrated our own journey. And from that, we have decided when I reach a certain age, this is going to happen, which is going to be the catalyst for me to wake up. So for some, it might be very young. For others, it might be in their 40s, 50s, or 60s even before it happens. So I believe it's part of the soul journey. And the reason I say that is because I do hypnosis and I take people into past lives. And sometimes they remember in between lives, like that little boy said, I was a spirit, and then I worked out my life mission, and then I found myself in mum's tum. I think that's exactly what we do. We actually work out our parents, siblings, what kind of journey we're going to take, and okay, when I reach that point, I want to wake up or whatever. That's how I understand it, and but you know, that's how it makes sense to me as well. Thank you.
Thank you. This is all of me.
So you resonate to that?
Yes, the only thing that I hadn't done is been taken from her as a child. But I have the Rh negative, I have the, I can see with my third eye, I haven't developed it yet, but I can walk around my whole house with the same blindfold on. I've been up in spaceships, I'm from the sun.
Do you feel the sun itself or a portal?
It's hollow, like in the
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And there's planets inside.
Yeah.
And it's been a very hard journey because most of the time you feel like you're crazy.
Yeah.
But I've been on many spaceships. I've interacted with beings that are just light that come through you, and it feels still in your body. It feels like joy, like you've never felt. I've had 2 near-death experiences. I worked in hospice. I'm a doula, Reiki master teacher, past life regression. I mean, it's had contact, seen, you know, those physically. So, and somehow running from it all, because it's sometimes so overwhelming, you know, to contain all that. And there's very few people to talk to. And so I have found that I got so, my abilities became so strong and so fast that I basically had to stop everything because I didn't have a sound before, and I think that's what the hardest thing. That's why I'm here. You know, doing work. We used to do stuff there for a while. So thank you. I feel like I have a outline. I'll definitely read your book. I would love to find a community.
Well, there is a community. Igor here.
Yeah.
Has had an awakening. Tell them what you're creating.
So I think the community people that are here, they're aware of this, and it did hold meditations and everything else, and we did the different connections to different beings, and held extraterrestrial meetups as far as connecting to these energies. And I'm sure a lot of you felt a lot of different energies. Right before they started, there was a ship actually just came above here, and actually 3 of them in different directions. And every single one of you was vibrating. This whole room, this like circle right here, was its own consciousness. So every single one of you came here for a reason. You guys know that. But the experience that you guys have felt is within you. It's nothing happening outside of you. And every single one of you just want to bring awareness. Take a moment, just close your eyes. And bring your awareness to your heart center. And just relax into it. And bring your awareness in the back of your heart. Feel that energy expand. That is the communication that comes through the back of the heart center and the back of the head. There are receptors in our mind that allow us to communicate with these multidimensional beings. Stay in that moment for a second. Feel into it. And feel yourself expand in it. So every time that you do connect to these beings, you're actually connecting in a fractal consciousness of your own soul. You will not connect to anything or anyone that is not part of your own reality. in a different dimension of existence. So if you guys are ready, you can start coming back.
There's a community forming.
Yes, there is a lot of communities. There's a lot of events happening everywhere these days. I mean, it's not like it was in 2004, 2005. Tell somebody you meditate, they would tell you, oh, you have psychological issues, that's why you meditate. Now they ask you, how can I learn this stuff? How can I sit with you? How can I explore out into different dimensions of realities? So there was, I think, few of you took the classes. I created a 7-week course, which now is going to be a 3-day course. And it's basically takes you from your physical reality into your multidimensional reality and how to anchor that into your physical reality here and now. Because what we all want to do, we want to be happy and joyful in life. So how do we balance that multidimensional existence? Because it starts to pull us. We're happy one day and we open our eyes, we feel sad. And we don't want to exist in this reality. We don't want to do things because we feel we're not part of it. Well, you are part of it because you were brought here. You chose to be here. So integrate all of that into here. How can we download all that information that's being existing in your other dimensions of reality into here? Those abilities that you have in different existences, you can utilize them here for the development of your own growth. So it's not about separation, but it's about uniting all of that you are. So as you do that, you will have more joy, you'll stay more in that heart space.
That's the new human, isn't it?
Correct. And I do have children as well. And I've been teaching my children this since they were growing. Since they were little babies, I would communicate to them on their soul level. I would communicate telepathically with them to the point where they would actually go and get me stuff. So now at this point, they will sit in a room, and when I do healings or any events, they would look and tell me, Papa, that person was thinking of other stuff while you were doing the healing on them. This person was thinking of this and that. Or they'll look at them and they'll say, oh, this is what they have. Or this is what's happening to them in their life. And this is natural, comes to them, nothing that they have to work on. It's just there. And that's it. So existence of this reality or that reality, it's all happening. It's just us have to accept it. And I think for children, it's so much easier because I think these 2 hours of explanation, her consciousness would just transform instantaneously into those children, and they already know it all. There's no need to sit and explain anything because their mind is clear. How many of you go to bed at night and you close your eyes and you start thinking of how your day was, what you could have done, or what are you going to do? Pretty much everybody. But close your eyes and just go in right away into sleep mode or into that trance. Once you stop this thought process in your mind, the whole universe is there. How can you hear God if you're constantly talking? So, and the 7-week course was actually built to take people to that level so they can easily tune in and they become self-independent and still exist in this reality and do everything that we're meant to do.
Just for people watching, how can they find this course?
So the course, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
The course is online. They can Google it on Facebook. So you can either go to igorgalbov.com and it's being worked on. There's a lot of stuff being posted. On Facebook, it's also Alignment of Light. So you guys, if anybody's interested, you guys can log in, and you can also be on live on through Zoom. So there's other platforms that will be utilized to do the classes. The classes are actually being held in Philadelphia, in New York, and in California. So if anybody's interested, feel free, and there's more information on there as well. And if you guys, especially people that live here in this area, I'm always here So I'm always available, and feel free to contact me. Okay.
So any more questions for Igor or Mary? Or
Oh, the books are 20 each,
20
and the
each.
DVDs are 10.
Anyone learn anything new?
And the books have their own programming in them.
Yeah.
The consciousness there is powerful. So
they've got the frequencies.
I just want to say thank you because I feel like we all got a really powerful transmission tonight. And that is supposed to share Hana on the hill, Ina, Harakti Ikundi Hindamata.
Thank you. And I would like to say thank you, every one of you, for coming and sharing yourselves and being here amongst this beautiful group of star people. Because people say, well, which ones are they? You all are, because you're all here. You wouldn't be here unless you were. So, you know, take your frequencies with you and do some work with them, guys, because you've all got them in your energy fields now. So take them and do what you can. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks so much. Thank you guys for making this event happen. So these books are 20 each. I'm going to stop the recording.
Right, so I'll close this down.
Thank you all for watching. Stay tuned to New Realities.
Energy coming in. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't get there yet.